This is the Highly Sensitive Club, episode number 35.
Have you been told you're too sensitive, too dramatic, or too much? Do you have big feelings and deep thoughts you don't always know what to do with? I'm Stephanie Lynn, a certified life coach and highly sensitive person. I've helped dozens of highly sensitive clients feel more energized, more confident, and more in control of their high sensitivity. In these episodes, you'll get the information and inspiration to level up your life as a highly sensitive person too. Welcome to the Highly Sensitive Club.
Hello, highly sensitive person, and welcome to this week's episode of the Highly Sensitive Club. You caught me laughing because I'm trying a new hairstyle because I just finished Lucifer for the first time, and Ella always has like a half up with a bun. And I just realized as I'm looking at myself that I look like Belle from Beauty and the Beast, but I'm keeping it. In this week's episode of the Highly Sensitive Club, this is the yin to last week's yang about being authentic with some safety. And in order to build safety with yourself and with others, you need to have boundaries. I know that this is a buzzword, and I think people tend to overuse this word too, or they misuse it because they sort of understand what it means, but they're not entirely sure about what it means, or there are a lot of memes and simplifications of what boundaries are. So I want to talk about this in a little bit more detail because the more that you know about this, the better off you are going to be. I want to start off with a quote from my friend Dawn, who is also a coach who's been doing this for a long, long time. She told me to plant people where they're most likely to flourish. Not all plants are meant for the same kind of environment. There are night blooming flowers, like jasmine. There are morning blooming flowers, like morning glories that close at night. There are lots of different opportunities and ways to connect with people and to build relationships with them, so they don't all look the same. I don't know about you, but for a long time, I had this belief that I'm either close to people or I'm not close to people. There was a big moat and a big fortress wall around the people who were close to me. And if I let someone in, then they were on the inside and they got to be in the castle behind the walls, but everyone else was outside the castle. And this actually created a lot of friction for me because if I wanted to be at all close to someone, I brought them in way too close. And so they were actually a little bit closer to me than they should have been. And I was giving them way too much information and being more vulnerable with them than was good for the relationship. And on the flip side, if I didn't feel close to someone or didn't want to feel close to someone, then I way pushed them away. And I wouldn't give them information, and I would have a lot of judgments about them or a lot of resentment about the way they were acting, instead of just letting them come as close as they were supposed to come. Instead of there being a moat and a drawbridge and a fortress wall and then a castle on the other side, and you're either in it or you're out of it, I have since then, which was about 10 years ago, developed a much more dynamic and intricate visual that works much better for me. There is a hedge maze in which I have my relationships. My innermost courtyard with the beautiful fountain and the gardens and the trellises and the archways and all the magical stuff is where my closest people get to come. This is reserved for my closest romantic partners, my closest friendships, my closest family members. After that, there are some concentric circles to this hedge maze, and there are gates that you have to be able to pass by showing you are open and honest enough to be able to get past those gates. There have been times where I have planted people at a certain circle of the garden and they were a little too close, they might have been too far away. And as you build relationships with people, their position in your inner hedge maze or your inner garden is probably going to change. People will come and go from your life, whether it's for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. I know that's so pithy and makes me sound like an old lady, but it really is true. Not everyone is meant to stay in your life forever, and that's okay. Some people do, and a lot of people don't. It's okay for them to get to certain places in your garden or your hedge maze and leave when it's their time to leave. You plant people where they are most likely to flourish, and this means that they've earned the spot that they have in your concentric circles of your garden, and it also means that you meet them where they are. Not everyone wants to be as close to you as you want to be to them, or vice versa, and that's okay. This doesn't mean that they can't be in your life. It just means that you need to be flexible and resilient with the relationship to let it be what it needs to be and not try to force it to be something that it isn't or to push someone away who could actually add a lot to your life. I have learned from two major mentors on this point. The first and the main one is Terry Cole, who wrote the book Boundary Boss. I freaking love this book. What Terry describes are preferences, desires, and boundaries. I like to think of preferences as slight tendency toward one thing or another. My favorite example is when you're stuck trying to choose what to have for dinner and you're like, I could go for Chinese or I could go for Mexican. Maybe you even would prefer one particular thing and you're saying, I would really like to do tacos tonight, but if you're up for something else, I'm really open to that. I would say preferences are the loosest between preferences, desires, and boundaries. And that means that you do have something that you like a little bit more than others, but you aren't so attached to it that it must be that thing or nothing else. Preferences are usually the lowest level of intimacy. And it's the easiest thing to decide on as well, because you have a little bit more flexibility. You don't necessarily have to narrow everything down to one particular thing and it must be that way. Instead, you can just say, I actually would rate these things a little bit higher than the other things, which for a highly sensitive person who is very conscientious of subtleties and nuances, that slight degree or the tiers of preferences might be perfect for you to practice communicating and expressing yourself a little bit more. A desire is more intense than a preference. This is something that you really, really want. This could also be a dream or a vision or a goal, but this is something that is really important to you. It is not someone's responsibility to create your desires for you or give you the things that you really, really want. That's actually your job to meet your own needs and meet your own wants so that you can show up more fully to all of your relationships and you don't build codependency. However, if you have a really strong desire and you communicate that to your loved ones, then it is wonderful when they can help you meet your desires, whether that's by giving you something, doing something for you, saying something that you want to hear, or being willing to be by your side and be a partner or be a guide while you're pursuing your desires. This is a huge level of vulnerability and intimacy. And the interesting thing about desires is, again, that they really are not meant to be dependent on other people, although another person's participation might be very, very valuable. So an example that I like to give, because I've been working on this a lot lately, is physical touch. We are built to respond very strongly to physical touch. This is all humans, but especially highly sensitive people, because we take in sensations more acutely than other people. The way that you experience physical touch from someone else is going to be different than the type of physical touch you can give yourself. If you put your arms around each other and you kind of hold yourself like this, cross your arms in front and give yourself a big squeeze, that can feel really good. That can actually calm your nervous system and lower your cortisol levels. But it is just not as effective as getting a hug from someone else. They've actually done studies that holding a hug with someone for 20 seconds does some really powerful things to your body in order to calm yourself down and be able to know that you are safe. This is actually one of the things that can break a stress cycle or an anxiety cycle, is to get a hug or to have some physical touch with someone else. If you have a desire for a lot of physical touch and your loved ones don't want it as much or as often as you do, if you are depending on them to meet this desire for you, this will create some friction. It is okay for someone to do something because you love it, even if they don't love it as much as you, because that might be their expression that they love you, that they're willing to go a little bit out of their way to do something nice for you because it's so important to you. However, there are other ways that you can meet this desire, like getting a massage. Paying a massage therapist or going to a spa and getting a massage might be a way that you can meet that desire. Your friends can give you hugs. Your family members can give you hugs. If you don't have one of those readily available, there are actually places or people that you can hire who can give you that sense of physical touch. Now, I don't mean this in a salacious sense, although of course that is an option for some people, but there are always ways that you can take care of your own needs and take care of your own desires without depending on your loved ones to give them to you. And again, desires are much more intense and they are much more important to you than a simple preference is. And your loved ones can help you meet those desires, work with you to make sure that you're getting the things that you want and they're getting what they want too. You never want someone to give you something that they truly do not want to give you. Consent is so important. Preferences are liking something better than another, but you're willing to be a little bit more flexible. Desires are much more important to you. They are much more intense. Boundaries are something different. Boundaries are what you will do according to the situation. And the situation could mean place, it could mean a group of people, or it could mean the things that another single person says or does, such as smoking, for instance. I have never liked smoking. The smell of cigarettes, for me as a highly sensitive person, is really intense, and it will almost instantly make me feel nauseated. Not that that happens as much now that vaping is a thing, but when cigarettes are around, my boundary is you can go ahead and keep smoking. I am not going to shame you or make you feel bad for smoking a cigarette, but I'm going to exit the situation. This is an example of a boundary. A lot of people think a boundary is walking up to someone and saying, hey, you need to quit smoking because I don't want you to. This is not a boundary. It's not even really a request. It's more of a demand. And this is where a lot of people get into trouble, because a boundary is actually not about another person doing what you want them to do. It's about you standing up for what you want and showing that you're going to take care of yourself and you're going to do the things that you need to do regardless of what someone else is doing. If they do not respect your boundaries, meaning they want you to change the way that you're acting or behaving in order to make them feel better, this is a sign to you of someone that may not be worthy of your trust or your respect or your intimacy or your vulnerability. This is someone who's showing you that they want something from you regardless of how you feel. They might not be doing this maliciously. They might not even be doing this intentionally. We are taught, especially as women, to give other people what they want in order to feel safe and accepted. This people-pleasing mask is very common for highly sensitive people because we're so vigilant and we're so aware of what is going on around us and how other people are feeling. It's very easy for us to develop this habit or this belief that we are supposed to do things to help other people that we care about, even at our own expense. This is not true. If someone wants you to do something at your own expense, especially when you've explicitly said you don't want to and it makes you uncomfortable, this is not a good thing. And maybe your boundary in that instance is to leave, or it's to not talk to that person for a little while and to tell them very clearly, this is not okay. I am not saying you're a bad person. I'm not saying that I don't want you in my life and our relationship is over, but it means that until you are willing to respect my boundaries, I am not willing to have a conversation with you. Please let me know when you are ready to come back and have a conversation about this. And please be aware that if you approach me in this particular way, this is what I'm going to do. For instance, I do not respond very well to a raised voice. When I hear someone's voice rising, my nervous system tends to overreact to this. This is just something that my body does. Maybe you are very similar too. If you are one of those people who does not respond well when someone's voice is rising, you might have a boundary that says, if you raise your voice, I would like you to lower it in order for us to continue the conversation. If you are not able to lower your voice and speak to me at a normal register, then I will need to leave so that I can take care of myself and we can come back when you can discuss it with me a little bit more calmly. If someone is not willing to do this, then it's going to be very hard to have a conversation with them. And you can tell them, if you are not willing to do this, I may not be able to be in a relationship with you. This is what I need in order to feel safe in this conversation and in order to feel safe in this relationship. And if that's not something that you want or that you're willing to honor, then I may need to remove myself from the situation. And again, none of this is about the other person. It's not about demanding that they do anything or commanding them to stop thinking or feeling or acting the way that they're acting. It's about how you are going to act in response to the way that they are behaving. And this is something that you can build into your relationships and to discuss with the other person. And they can then do the same thing with you. When you're behaving a particular way and it makes them feel something, you can at least be aware of it. But they can tell you what their boundaries are and what they will do if you are behaving in a way that makes them uncomfortable. And again, this has nothing to do with you. It doesn't even necessarily mean that you need to change or that they need to change. It's just that something is going to happen in order for everyone to feel safe and then to come back and communicate some more. A lot of times people mistake boundaries for expectations. I'm going to steal a line from my friend and colleague, Steve Bennett Martin. Expectations are premeditated resentments. When you have expectations about how things should be, you probably get blinders on And you believe that that is the only way that things should be. It is the only truth. It is the only thing that is quote unquote right or correct. And anything that deviates from that is going to cause you a lot of pain and a lot of heartache. It might even hurt or make you feel angry. Expectations are when we believe that something should be a certain way. And when you have those expectations, you close yourself off to other opportunities and other ways of showing up in the world or other ways for things to reach you. This can happen when you have expectations of how a situation should go, of how your work should go, of how your relationship should go, but it especially can get you into trouble when you believe that your desires should then become someone else's expectations. You want something and you believe that someone else should give it to you. This is when you get into trouble, and this is why it becomes a premeditated resentment. Now, my other mentor that I mentioned is Brooke Castillo of the Life Coach School, and I love the way that she phrases this around sharing your wants match. You can make requests of people. This is not demanding or expecting that someone give you the things that you want, whether that's your preference or your desire. It's expressing, this is what I would like. This is how I would like this to go. This is how I would like this to be. This is what I want. Are you interested in showing up that way, in doing that thing with me, in saying those things, in giving me those things? You allow them to choose to show up and give you the thing that you want, especially if that's something that they want. Someone might not want something, but it might be something that you want. For instance, I'm thinking of a specific example. Say you have a partner and they want you to visit their family with them. You might not particularly like their family, and it is your choice every time whether you visit their family with them or not. But you might make the decision that you might not necessarily connect super closely with your partner's family. You might not even have a lot in common with them, but your relationship with your partner is really important to you. And because your partner requests it, you're willing to do X. You're willing to spend a couple hours with them, and then you're going to do your own thing. You're willing to go and spend the weekend with them if you have some alone time or if you have some time to regroup with your partner. You are willing to go and have a dinner with them, and you are not willing to talk about certain subject matter like politics. You want to support your partner and to do something for them because you care about them, which might be a little bit stronger than your desire not to go and spend time with their family members who you don't necessarily like or connect with as much. If you don't want to spend any time with your partner's family or your partner's friends, that is also perfectly okay, especially if your partner does not really care that much whether you spend time with their close people or not. However, if it's really important for you to spend time with your partner's family or friends and you don't really want to do that, that is a good indication that you don't have want match. This might not be a relationship that you want to continue to be in or that will last long term because your partner's wants are in direct conflict or in direct contrast with what you want. The more open and honest you are with the other person about what you truly want, your preferences and your desires and your boundaries, the more quickly you'll be able to tell whether you have a wants match with the other people in your life, whether that's romantic partners, friends, colleagues, coworkers, etc. As a recap for this whole conversation, plant people where they're most likely to flourish. Not everyone is going to be in your close inner circle, and that is not a bad thing. That actually makes your close inner circle a lot more precious and a lot more valuable. The closer or farther away someone is, and the more layers you have to your inner garden or your inner hedge maze, the more you're going to be able to create lasting relationships that meet the other person where they are, but also meet your needs and preferences and desires as well. Coming back to Terry Cole and Boundary Boss, the book, there is a difference between preferences, desires, and boundaries. In addition, there are also differences between expectations and requests. A preference is liking something a little bit more than something else. You might like something more, but you're willing to go along with some other things too, depending on what the group wants or what your other person wants. It's not that important to you. A desire is something that is very important to you and is a very intense feeling. Now, this is not something that other people are obligated to do for you. They are things that are important to you to create for yourself. And by asking others to participate in those desires with you, you give them the opportunity to either give something to you freely that they want to give, or to come alongside you, or to guide you or support you in your journey to meet your own desires. It is your job and your responsibility to meet your own desires for yourself and to get creative in pursuit of following those dreams and those desires. Boundaries are things that you will do according to outside situations that you can't control, such as how someone else is thinking or feeling or acting, or a situation such as your physical environment. What you will do is different from an expectation. An expectation is thinking that someone should act or behave or be a certain way. There are lots and lots of ways of being in the world. And the more peace you can make with that and the more nuances and subtleties you can see as a highly sensitive person, the better off you're going to be in building your relationships. And in order to avoid having expectations on people, what you can do instead is to make requests of people. You ask them, hey, I would like this, and I am not attached one way or another, whether you do this or not, but I would really like it if you'd be willing to do that. Are you interested? Do you both want the same thing? Other people might not even know that they want the same thing until you ask them. And if you're vulnerable and if you make a request, whether or not they say yes or no, it doesn't matter. You're still going to go and do the thing, but it creates connection when you're willing to be vulnerable and to make requests of others to help you get the things that you want in life. That's actually how we build relationships, is to help each other get what we want and to feel good, in addition to supporting each other and for being there when things are really rough or when they're really hard. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And again, this was kind of the yin episode to the yang of being authentic and doing it with safety, which was the previous episode. So I highly recommend that you listen to these two together. But I hope that you enjoyed this one and that you have a lot more clarity now on how to decide on your preferences and your desires and actually what a boundary is. A boundary is not about the other person. It's not expecting them to change. It's not expecting them to be someone that they're not. It's how you're going to behave and who you're being in response to the outside world and the things that are not in your control. Your boundaries are always in your control. And you get to decide, and you get to make mistakes and get uncomfortable and try things out and mess things up and get hurt and hurt others, and know that you're going to be okay, that anything that you do is forgivable, that you are worthwhile, you're worthy of love, you're worthy of acceptance, and even if you mess up, that is okay. You can still build lasting, intimate, loving relationships with other people. It comes from expressing those boundaries and practicing and trying them out so that you can figure out what works for you. It's also how you build better relationships, because people will really show you who they are when you share your boundaries with them, the more you know yourself. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you on the next one.
Thanks for listening. If you're ready to take what you learned today to the next level, head over to Stephanie Lynn, that's LINN.com, and book a consultation call to get started. I can't wait to see you there, my dear HSP.